Welcome back to the podcast Dare, the time of your life, formerly Life's Booming, brought to you by Australian seniors. Hi, I'm Jean Kittson, and this season is called Better with Age, where we're flipping the script and showing you how aging is not a dirty word, rather it's a time to be embraced. In this episode, we're looking at breaking new ground. At an age when many people are beginning to look for the off switch, some over 50s are inspiring us by dreaming bigger than ever. Take our guest, Jamie Durie. The landscape designer and TV host isn't just not winding down, he's completely upskilling and retooling. From navigating the beautiful chaos of a young family in his 50s to revolutionising the way we build our homes with high-tech prefab design, Jamie is living proof getting older doesn't automatically mean it's time to start downsizing. And also with us is Dr Zac Seidler, a clinical psychologist and leading men's mental health expert. Zac is also Global Director of Men's Health Research at Movember. Jamie and Zac, I'm so happy to welcome you both to the studio. Welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah. Good to meet you, Zac.
You too, Jamie.
Yeah.
Can't wait to chat.
I know. Well, it's so exciting to hear what you're doing, Jamie. And, you know, when people are usually in their 50s, I suppose they start thinking about maybe slowing down or never crossed your mind?
Well, I think we as men, and I'm hoping I'm not alone here, Zac, we only really start working it out in our 40s. And by the time you then reach 50, you go, okay, now I know exactly where I want to land and exactly what I want to focus on. And I've got the experience behind me where I've made a few mistakes, learnt along the way, and I can apply with accuracy and shoot with a rifle, not a shotgun at your goals, if you like, because the idea of kind of focusing in on the things that I think you're most passionate about and that are most relevant in your place is, I think, distilling everything you've learned throughout your career.
It's something you come to with experience and, as you say, making maybe some mistakes, but then refining, fine-tuning where your passion is. It's just like what you're doing now with this prefab. Is it the prefab housing, but you're also doing something called the Infinity Garden?
Yeah.
Tell us about this project.
Well, there's, Future House is the name of the show.
Right.
And we're now at Channel 9, which is brilliant, and we've had an amazing season. Basically, it's an exploration of modern methods of construction. And if we are sitting in the building crisis right now, the housing crisis, and we've got, 1.2 million homes to build over the next 5 years, how on earth are we going to achieve that target when we're 87,000 trades short of achieving that target with our conservative ways of building houses? Our houses need to be more energy efficient. They need to be more cost effective. They need to be more structurally sound. They need to be more resilient with increased weather attacks. Over the last 5-10 years, we've all seen the floods, the fires, the storms, all increasing. And then how do we make it more affordable for everyday Australians so that we can all get off this renting bus and actually start to own a piece of Australia and be proud of it, but make it more affordable. So that's really what it's about. Prefab has come a long way. We're no longer talking about those archaic old kit homes. They're now beautifully designed, sophisticated homes, some of them which you can buy at a hardware store at Bunnings these days. I don't know whether you've seen that or not, but it's amazing what's happening in this space. And we're playing catch up, and we wanted to develop a format to talk about those where we could, pass on some of these learnings and create intelligent DIY design where Australians could learn from what we're learning from and help progress the solutions around solving the building crisis.
Well, I can hear that you're using all your background in, gardens and landscaping and building, but also a maturity that, and in experience and knowledge that comes with age, as you personally, and then you taking this knowledge and experience and then putting it into the community for a really important community benefit. Does that make you feel good about your work? Is that what you mean by focusing more in your 50s?
Oh, for sure. This is the show I've always wanted to make. And having worked on 56 primetime shows throughout my career, which is a lot when you only started at kind of 28, it feels like everything's come full circle. Because, we're not just inspiring people to take up new ideas, but we're instilling them with education and awareness around how to create more sustainable homes, how to tread more lightly on the planet, how to reduce our energy costs, how to tackle the cost of living crisis, and how to get more Australian families into more homes faster.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, from a personally, that's a lot of work, Jamie. You don't feel like you should be slowing down, spending more time, weirdly, pottering around?
Weirdly, the more I dive into this, the more passionate I become. And passion creates energy. It just comes from somewhere. You would know this, Zach.
Yeah.
What you guys have created is astonishing. And the people's lives that you've touched through the funds raised throughout Movember is absolutely mind-blowing.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that. It's been a community effort in a very similar vein. And I think Australians can really get around that type of grassroots community building when you provide them with the right resources to do so.
Yep.
But I love the idea that, I think that's slowing down, that idea of becoming 50 or 60 and starting to slow down, especially because life expectancy is increasing. Thank God. We're moving, into longer lives, hopefully healthier lives as well. The data is pretty clear that when men start to slow down, bad things happen, to be honest. Retirement is not a good vibe for lots of guys because they have not built the scaffolding around them. They often haven't spent a lot of time with their friends or family over the years because they've been in this provider-protector mode for so long that when it slows down, they go, okay, I'm going to play golf, I guess, or something, and I've never played it before, and how does this work, and who are the guys I'm going to call? And so I really like the idea of seeing eras of your life and the fact that as you are maturing and aging, you're becoming more dynamic in ways and kind of getting rid of the stuff that was a waste of energy, the stress, the anxiety, the trying to do 1,000 things at once that I'm probably still doing and hopefully we'll get rid of at some point. But that ability to work out where you want to spend your time and energy for, the next era, and then there'll be another one after that is so important. And I think, Movember's been around for over 20 years and we're now moving into the next stage. We were just this young kid on the block, kind of breaking stuff and trying to work out what's the best way to show up in the charity space and really change men's lives. And it started with a practical joke. It starts with something that everyone...
A pun,
pun, exactly. And it moves from that conversation starter, really, into thousands of programs and $1 billion plus that we've fundraised over the years. And so many people say that men don't want to get around this stuff. It's like, typically it is women leading charity dinners and doing fundraising events. And we kind of broke that mold and suggested that if you provide the right framework, something that is about banter and community and mateship and the things that matter to guys and their health, health by stealth is always what we say.
Health.
Go around. Don't hit them on the head with the thing.
No,
Yeah, that's right.
Start in a light way with an idea that's fun and then dig a bit deeper. And
it's the path of least resistance, isn't it? Because I grew up watching Magnum PI, and there's a Tom Selleck in all of us where we desperately wanted to grow that moustache, but just didn't feel like there was enough reason to. And this gives us the excuse to go, oh, I'm doing something good. And I'm also exploring this moustache, which could look terrible on me, but it also could look fantastic, and my missus might love it.
Great.
I love the wives and the girlfriends who are just like, make this stop every year. But that is the joy of this thing. And some people find that they can grow a beautiful mustache. We had a whole campaign called Shit Mows Save Lives. You've got this wispy thing. It doesn't matter.
Growing a moustache doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And so there's this constant reminder of the cause. And bringing people's minds back every time you look in the mirror. Oh, that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
because I'm raising money for this cause.
And we also want to get around the idea that, November is 1 month of the year.
Yeah,
We're lucky
yeah.
to have the pun to stand behind. But
Yeah.
this is an all-year situation.
Yeah.
There are guys, whether it's prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health and suicide prevention, lots of the things that we work in, they don't come and go. They are a part of men's health. They're a part of our families. Our wives deal with them. Our children manage this stuff. And so we want to make this an all-year-round conversation.
Yeah.
And it just gets supercharged in November.
So what would you say to men who perhaps think they can just stop everything, or they've had to stop everything because of health or their age, or their job's finished because of their age, and they think they can go out to play golf, but then, as you say, they may not have the friends around because they haven't stayed in touch with them or that. So how do men find a new purpose? Because I think what you're doing, Jamie, is really a progression, a development of everything you've been doing in your past. Yeah. But some men have just spent their whole lives doing one thing, and then suddenly that stops. So how do they find a new sort of purpose, or how can they build on the skills, knowledge they have?
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I'm very keen for Jamie's thoughts, but the way that I see it, because I see a lot of men in their 50s, 60s, it's funny because lots of guys now are having their midlife crisis in their 30s, which is kind of good because they still have the time to pivot accordingly. But what happens is that when we get into the 60s, 70s, even 80s, my grandpa's 96 and still kicking. He's around.
Great.
He goes into his office every day. I have no idea what he does, but he goes to work.
Right.
And
Good on him.
so there's a part of that purpose that comes from that, but it's about an expansion, really, which is that if you are myopic and you have this singular vision of who you are and this is all that you can do, when that thing ends, whether you're fired, made redundant, you retire, whatever might take place, we're in shifting times at the moment. And without that foresight and without the vulnerability to go, who am I? Taking pause, going, who am I? What matters to me? What are my values? And how can I go about, picking and choosing lots of different things to spend my time doing, whether that's family, friends, hobbies. It shouldn't just come when you click pause and you go, who am I now? What am I supposed to do? Because that is going to breed catastrophe. It's terrifying for all of us. Yeah. You need to work your way up to it and realize there is each day a chance to kind of do a little bit more in different fields of your life, water the ground in different areas, and realize that if you are, you can be a one-track, you can be a one corporation man your entire life. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it comes at the cost of you never prioritizing your kids or your friends or your hobbies, that's just not really what we're here for. We're here to do many different things and to expand and grow. And I always find it very interesting. There's this trope that men don't talk. They don't want to go to therapy. They don't want to discuss what's happening in their lives. And I always, whenever a guy comes in and he is a bit, doesn't have all the words, he grunts a bit, he's silent most of the time, I'm like, why are we here if not to understand ourselves?
Yeah.
And I think that lots of guys, when they get into those later years, they start to do that work. But it'd be lovely if they could do it a bit earlier.
I didn't start my career in, finding our future version of our house. Like what is the modern method of construction? I started in a very, very different space where I was in Las Vegas dancing with an all-male group called Manpower.
Various people said, you need to talk to Jamie about this. You brought it up, not me.
No, but listen, they were the greatest years of my life. And, I started it when I was 16. Wow. I was lucky enough to meet along my travels, and we toured 14 different countries and played to, sometimes 8,000 women a night at various
and one guy
entertainment centers, in Sun City in South Africa and Hong Kong and all over the place. And I got to see a lot of the world many, many times, circumnavigated the globe many times before I was even 21. And I think travel's been, my greatest teacher. They say it's the university of life. And so by the time I got to sort of 23, I was like, okay, what do I really want to do with my life? And weirdly, I met a garden designer by the name of Paul Bangay, and we got talking, and he took me to his garden design studio, and he said, "This is what I do." And I said, "This is I said, "You design gardens for a living? This is amazing." So not only could I help heal the planet by planting more trees, but I can also do it in a creative way that would stimulate the creative side of myself, right? So before I left Manpower, I enrolled into a horticultural course for 4 years. And there was that overlap effect where I was still doing shows, still producing calendars.
Yes.
And my teachers had copies of my calendar. My horticultural teachers had copies of my calendar in their staff room, right? And they were laughing at the fact that I was, turning up to school every week, learning the names of plants, 3,500 of them. And throughout that period, I didn't really graduate until I'd sort of reached, I think, 30. But those last few years of my life where I was still doing shows at the Crown Casino in Melbourne and Las Vegas in the summer in America, but I was going to school and studying, that's the pivot. There's that overlap effect.
Yeah.
Find what you're passionate about, start seeding that idea, pushing your way into what is it that I next want to do and move. And I think my love for the environment started way back then and then morphed into what I'm doing today. And there's been that overlap into, okay, how are we going to repair the planet as well? So, I've overlapped the next section of my career out of horticulture and then into environmental work, so...
But it's so values driven, and that's the thing. You see young guys now who all want to be entrepreneurs, and I end up seeing them because they're struggling to kind of reach this status that they believe they should reach in order to be successful. But it's get rich quick. And what you're describing is time. It's time, it's effort. It requires an understanding of what matters to you and trial and error and failure and all of that stuff, which eventually that all is the making of a man, over time. And you did two things at once because you've got to make a living, you've got to try to work out what matters to you, where you're going to go next, and you just keep following those open doors rather than going, this has to happen now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember doing a Samsung campaign. I was naked, and I finished that campaign, and then I'd literally that afternoon was at Ryde Horticultural College studying plants. But something had to pay the rent, right? So
that's
you kind of.
It looks like a world apart, but you were able to do that. Follow both, do the thing you had to do.
But Zac, you've pointed out something there which I think is quite important, and I think it sits in all of us as genuine human beings, and it's cause-related drive. And the advertising industry call this CRM, cause-related marketing, right? But cause-related drive sits in all of us. And when we suddenly tap into something that we feel like is supporting community, supporting the planet, supporting your fellow human being, there's a different drive inside you that kicks in. You've got it. That's what's driven you with your group over the years. I've got it. So if you can tap into what is your cause-related drive, you don't really have to find the energy. It finds you.
Yeah, that is exactly how I feel. Like lots of people roll their eyes when they ask me, what's your job like? What's a dream job? And I'm like, I'm in it. I'm living it.
Yeah.
And no one wants to hear this positivity for some reason. I'm like, everyone wants to complain all the time. And I'm like, no, I'm having a good time. It's nimble. It's constantly dynamic. It changes every day.
Yeah.
The lives of men, the man that shows up in front of me, he changes every moment, let alone all of the other guys around him in the same way that nature constantly adapts over time,
So, Zac, you're underselling yourself a little bit because the Movember started here in Australia in 2003.
Yeah.
But now how many countries does it hit?
Over 20.
And you've raised how much?
Over $1 billion Australian.
That is a huge impact.
Yeah.
And those funds get distributed how and are you part of the decision-making process
definitely.
Around that?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I lead our research team. So we've got, 20 PhDs across the globe who are asking questions around what's going on for men, what's happening when they engage with health systems, what's happening for new dads.
Yep.
How is a GP going to ask questions about to a dad who might be experiencing postnatal depression but isn't aware of it. We're looking at the manosphere and social media to make, men's lives a bit easier so they don't get tricked into some of this stuff, which is which is harming them. So I get to do the research. Then we've got an entire programs team where we're going in community grassroots and creating programs in local footy clubs for coaches, parents and young guys to understand the signs, spot the signs, be able to talk with one another when they're struggling, upskill community fundamentally around what to look for. Because I'm sure back in your days, that idea of like guys getting around one another at the pub and talking about what is bothering them, what they're feeling, what matters to them, how they want to show up in their families with their mates. It's a new conversation, and we're trying to provide the language for lots of these guys to be able to have those chats. So we build all of these different programs with community partners. You know, we are not doing this alone. We stand on the shoulders of giants, definitely. But it's just this humility, this Australian way kind of, where we just find our way into grassroots organisations in York, in the UK, we're in California, in the States, we're in Toronto. We just work out what's working there and we try and ramp it up with them, with the funds that we've raised.
Yeah, so good.
It is so good.
Imagine
it's
the
very
impact.
regenerative too, because it sounds like that at any age you can sort of discover yourself and find your passion and find the cause that drives you. And this would, so when men would reach a certain age, some of them haven't had any relationships, well, you know, the sort of intimate relationship with their families that a mother might have and their kids. So then they're suddenly in a grandparent role. Then they've got to relearn how to connect emotionally, I suppose.
But you see that. It's beautiful. And I think the grandparents, the grandfathers situation in this generation is really unique, where you see a lot of kids get a bit angry because they're like, I never got this attention. But the way in which grandfathers are going, oh, I was a career man and I spent all day, every day. I missed out on bath time. I didn't get to go and watch, you know, him play soccer. I didn't get to do any of these things. And now they're trying to reparent themselves in a way and take back those opportunities that was, you know, taken from them because they weren't purposeful. They weren't able to go, what is actually possible here? And that's also what Movember is trying to do, is open those doors and say, being a man does not mean living within these constraints that you have been sold. Yeah. Because they are harming you. They are fundamentally harming you. There's a reason that men die 4 years younger than women in Australia. That's a big gap. And it largely comes down to preventable reasons. Yeah. You know?
I'm father to 3 children, but my first child I had in my early 20s. And I'm a much better father now in my 50s than I was when I was 20, right? And I find very, very early on in my career, I was looking into a great speaker by the name of Anthony Robbins. We all know who Anthony. But there was one little nugget of wisdom that he shared with some of his followers, and that was the wheel of life. And within that wheel of life, you would have community, spirituality, friendship, family, career, all that stuff helps the wheel go around. And if one of those pieces of pie was not kind of out to its extremity, the wheel doesn't roll. And so I've mentally kind of always tried to keep that check in my life, but more so these days, because it's funny, the more time you put into your kids, the more worthwhile your life feels. It's incredible what they teach you. Yeah. And I just feel like now I'm going to battle for my family every day rather than just myself. Wow. So it's a much less selfish way of life. But also we've got an enormous responsibility to raise these kids in the very best way that we possibly can and to keep bettering ourselves as parents and humans on a day-to-day basis so that stuff spills over to them and they become great custodians of the planet and great movers and shakers and whatever it is they want to do, you know, and you've got to instill that stuff to them, I think. But
so many people ask me to define like healthy manhood or masculinity because we so often talk about toxicity and what is broken and what is wrong and men doing bad things, which takes place, but we don't really have an aspiration. We don't have a message around what is possible. And I think that idea of being in constant sync around this notion of growth that comes in multiple ways within your life. There are all of these quadrants. There are all of these parts of yourself that it's not a day-to-day thing necessarily. You know, sometimes you're going to be working really hard and you're not going to be able to be there at dinner. But what do you do to recalibrate the next day? Yeah. How do you find ways to make sure that thing is in sync?
Yeah.
Because that's what drives distress in guys. And that's what they're not necessarily aware of, that when some of those quadrants are falling away, they are feeling less like themselves.
Yes.
And it drives them potentially to do some things that are not in their best interest. Like if you're feeling like you're not being the best dad, lots of men start drinking more. Lots of men start pulling themselves away more because their kids start to, rebel.
Yeah.
When instead what is actually required is a leaning in. And that is that vulnerability that is required, rather than this guilt pulling back and saying, this is not for me.
Defensiveness.
Yeah, exactly. And you see that in a lot of guys. You see it a lot of women as well, which is this: you're feeling challenged. You're feeling like you're not living the life that you thought you were supposed to. And so you keep repelling further in the opposite direction, rather than saying, maybe I'm a bit off kilter here and I should recalibrate and work out what matters and have the conversations. And I want guys, lots of guys do this with their wives, but it ends up being so much emotional burden on the women, because the guys don't have deep male friendships where they can go and have these chats with other guys without feeling like a failure. Have you got guys in your life where you feel like you can really
totally
get into it?
Yeah. My best mate and I, ironically, we danced together back in the Vegas days.
Wow.
So we've been mates since, I was 20. And we talk probably 3 times a week. He's a dental technician.
Great.
And so
how far you've both come.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's there making the most extraordinary little pieces of technical equipment that dentures and things for people, that gives them self-esteem and pride and function and health and stuff, which is quite amazing. He's such a talented, dexterous man, but he's constantly sitting in his laboratory, in his studio, tinkering away. So he'll just call me in the middle of him making that stuff, and I can hear that he's in the studio, and I might be in a very different studio with TV cameras rolling or whatever, but we always find ways to communicate and lean on each other when we need it most, and we have over the years. It's been great. Yeah.
So you can be very vulnerable with him.
Oh God,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's got skeletons that we will take to the vault. Yeah.
Right. And that's what it's built. It's built on time and energy and realizing that you need to invest in this stuff.
Yeah.
And you see that, you get 15, 16-year-olds whose friends are everything to them.
Yeah.
And then they go into university, and slowly but surely they get into the workforce, they move into parenthood, and it just starts to drop away. And you often see the wife is the one who is leading the social calendar. They're the ones who are looking after everything. They're making all of the calls. And, they start to believe, these men, that they actually are not capable of this stuff. When, they're a CEO, they're doing really complex things during the day, and suddenly they can't call their friends to arrange a beer on a Saturday night. What is that? And so I think it's a muscle that needs working out over time, and it needs to be prioritized because consistently you look at the Harvard longitudinal study, which is an incredible study, started in the 30s, still going. The guys who are still alive, they're in their 90s, they had quality friendships. It didn't matter if they smoked, how they exercised, what their jobs were, all that stuff. It washes away. Yeah. We are human beings who require socializing. We require to be with one another. And that's why the loneliness crisis that happens for lots of older guys, older women as well, feeling so isolated, feeling like you don't have any purpose anymore. Men's Sheds, it's a group that we work really closely with.
Yeah, they're great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And they have women coming in now. You're tinkering, you're doing something, you've got mates there.
Yeah, it's great.
It gives you something. We need more of that. I feel like those third spaces, those sheds, those community halls, they're just evaporating. It's a real problem.
Yeah, we used to see a lot more community gardens. I don't see them so much anymore. We often talk about work-life balance, but when you were talking about the wheel or with all these different segments, I mean, because that's what life is. It's more complicated. It's not just
Yeah.
life over there and work there and you try
Yeah.
and balance it out. You've got to feed all these different elements of your
Yes.
life.
Because work-life balance makes it seem like life is 50% and work is 50%.
Yeah, it does.
When
Yeah.
in fact, it's actually work should be 20 and 20 and 20.
Yeah.
You've got all of these little things.
Yeah.
And-
Yes, it is about creating balance within your life. And if anyone can do a quick equation of the various facets in your life and go, ooh, I need to put a little bit more family time in here. Or when was the last time I called my mum or my dad? Or when was the last time I took my kids to the park and played with them and gave them a good time? And so you got to constantly keep a check of yourself, but also you got to look after your own mental health so that you can be a better father for them, right? I surf every Sunday with a group of guys that are aged between 50, 52 through to 74.
Wow.
In fact, probably one of the best surfers in our group. He's had a double hip replacement, and he's
I love that.
he's a better surfer than I am. He's awesome.
Unstoppable.
Oh
So
yeah,
great.
if you can hear me now, Tones, this is a big plug for you, bro.
Yeah.
But I went and bought a new longboard yesterday, and I couldn't wait to get out there at 7:30 with the boys just to kind of share this new longboard with them, and we had a great old time. We caught plenty of waves, and then we go to breakfast together, and that's what my partner Amika calls church for us.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like, go and have some boy time. See you at lunch.
But it's ritualized.
It is.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it, 12, 15 years now, and I really crave it.
Because you don't have to pick up the phone and go, are we doing it this week? It's on.
It's on.
Yeah,
It's always
right.
on.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and there's probably 30 of us all together, but usually only 10 or 12
Sure, come
or
and
even
go.
sometimes 6 turn up. But
That's
so
wonderful.
every so often they all, one or two of them pop in, and some of them are doctors, some of them come from the oil industry, some come from the textiles, others are property valuers and all sorts of people. It's amazing
Wow.
how many extraordinary high-achieving blokes still require this. We all need church, I think.
Yeah.
That ritual, being able to gather when you want to without making an appointment
That's
and
right.
being together.
Yeah.
I think one thing about your work, Jamie, I would say is that when we were talking before about men retiring and then going home and then the wife taking over, your work has always been around creating spaces around people's homes, your own homes, your
Yep.
garden and everything. So that's your domain. But for many men, they would leave work and the home is not their domain. It's like they're an alien in that environment
true.
because that's been the woman's domain and she's taking care of it. But you're lucky because that's so familiar to you and you have so much input in it. In fact, it's probably your domain more than anything.
I have a little too much input, and
Yeah.
so much so that we have to remind each other because Amiga loves interior design, and so I've had to kind of let go a little bit and let her play with the interiors and all, and she's done a great job. And we have found a good niche in each other's careers because of that. I think you got to make everyone feel like they're part of the end equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, growing up, my dad was a DIY, so he had a big, he basically built our house and,
Yeah.
nothing ever worked. But,
Yeah.
we
tried.
had 7 doors opening onto the lounge room, I think. But,
Yeah.
but he was as much part of the domestic life
Yep.
as my mother was.
I don't buy it that these rules and regulations that have been passed down by someone that we're not really aware of around what women should do and what men should do, Venus and Mars, it just doesn't benefit anybody. And this is the thing. There are some people who are just going to be better at certain things. And if, my wife is much better with a drill than I am.
That's right.
Give up.
Yep.
Like I've worked it
Good
out.
on you,
I'm
mate.
not gonna attempt it in the way that she does. I'm left-handed. I'm probably gonna cut off a finger. I'm gonna let her have her day. Yeah?
With
I
a
am-
drill, he's going to cut off a finger.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, hello.
He really
Yeah,
doesn't
well
use
picked up,
tools.
Well picked up.
You got it. Yeah.
I got to ask, Zach, we, mental health, of course, is a huge part of our elongating our lives, right? And I have to ask, what role does stress have in that? And also, what role does the foods that we eat play into the health of our minds and our bodies?
Well, I think that we went through a period, early on in the 20th century where we started to split the mind and the body, and that was not a smart move.
Yeah.
And we're very much ricocheting back away from that and realizing that everything needs to be calibrated and they all affect one another in a cause and effect kind of way. That's why any psychologist worth their salt will bang on first and foremost about sleep and diet and exercise.
Yeah.
Really. And it's funny because they're like, oh, no, I just want to talk about my feelings. And I'm like, no, if you don't get this stuff in order, there is no point in getting into the deeper stuff because this is going to create the foundations of well-being for you.
That's
and
right.
so fundamentally, the fuel that you are putting in, and fuel comes through sleep, through exercise, through diet and nutrition. And I think that we are at a point, because of cost of living stuff especially, where everyone is trying to make their way and survive as best they can. And because of time and work and families, food just kind of drops off. And so it becomes easier to do, quick fire meals that are probably much worse for you, whether it's sodium or sugar or whatever it is. And that has a fundamental effect on your sleep. It has a fundamental effect on your mood. And really, the more stressed you are, the more calorie-rich food you kind of end up wanting. Whenever you've had a tough day, you're going to go for the chocolate because you're trying to manage. And so trying to get ahead of that stuff by building in, I'm a very ritualized person because if Obama and Steve Jobs, all these people, they always talk about trying to get rid of the gray in your day, which is like Steve Jobs wore the same thing every day because he wanted to think about something else.
Right, yes.
I've eaten the same breakfast and lunch pretty much every day for 20 years because I have other things to deal with. And it's the best way that I'm going to go to the shops and I'm going to ensure that I have a nutritious meal because I'm doing the same thing. And everyone goes, don't you get bored? And I go, well, I'm still alive. So no, I'm all right.
I heard a Steve Jobs statement the other day, and you don't often hear him speak in this way, but he said, make food your medicine or medicine will be your food.
Wow.
Isn't that an awesome statement?
Yeah.
And I've not heard that before. And then I started looking into some of his interviews in more detail. Do you know that none of his kids had devices?
None. No one who owns a tech company, their kids never touch devices. Full stop.
That says it right there,
Everything.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a book years ago, and it was called Outdoor Kids, and it was about getting kids off TV games and devices and back out into the garden again, where I grew up. And I find that when I'm suffering stress or anxiety, I put my hands into the earth and I start weeding or planting or whatever, and suddenly within an hour or two, I'm back. I feel earthed,
grounded.
I feel grounded, and I've let go of all that stress into the earth. And there's a theory now about forest bathing, which I'm sure you've heard about, where you can go on a trip to Japan and walk through the forest for a minimum of 4 hours per day for 2 weeks, and it improves your immune system and helps fight tumours and infections and things, and adds so much to your mental health that. And I think we're now just discovering the benefits that nature has, what plays within our health.
Well, we're trying to create science around something that is obvious, which is the thing. We've created all of this infrastructure that is actually ruining our lives, and now we're trying to peel it back and go back to basics, which is, the back in my day, we used to play on the street and would hang around with different generations of kids and do all of that stuff. And now, the fog is really what it descends from the phones and iPads and the television. It's this notion of detachment from who you are and who you want to be. And we see this with young kids. The longer they spend on social media, the more they are unable to actually access their own wants and needs. Because they're being
the less
told.
functional they are when they get out into the real workplace as well.
It takes so much time to relearn these things.
There was a professor that wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods. I developed this theory called the outdoor room, where you would convert your kitchen into an outdoor space, your living room into an outdoor space, your bathroom, your bedroom, so that everything was connected to nature. And you would spend more time outdoors being reconnected with nature through your everyday functions. And I
Yeah,
used to talk about
beautiful.
this, like, let's take the roof off our house and then instill plants into our everyday lives. Think of your backyard like that, right? And that was what I used to model the outdoor room theory of. Now I want to take this to another level where we talk about, health and well-being and fitness, and how do we take exercise into the outdoors? How do we then start to, control the food that goes into our children's mouths and our families' mouths, reduce pesticides and herbicides, get rid of glyphosates? What role does that play into keeping our bodies healthy enough to be able to withstand stressful times and so forth,
Yeah.
Have there been any studies within your funding groups in the past where you've seen a direct correlation between stress and the increase of disease and poor health?
Oh, yeah. It's the strongest causation you can possibly find.
Right.
It drives cancer. It drives heart disease. It drives stroke.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the more stressful your life is, the more cortisol you've got running through your veins.
Yeah.
The lower your life expectancy is.
Yeah, and I used to live off stress. Like I that adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved, and we may not get this garden done on time, or or I may not get this project finished in time. But the older I get, the more I realize, wow, this is not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to minimize stress down to zero.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we're going to maintain strong health.
And how we respond to stress. Like the more stress you have, the worse you are at responding to it.
Yeah.
And that's why you see lots of guys who are just like exploding because they just don't know how to regulate that stuff, because they don't have the energy, they don't have the coping mechanisms, they don't have the people to call on.
Yeah.
But the more you realize what it is, there's so many guys I talk to and I go, do you get stressed about things? And they're like, no, I've never felt anxiety before.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there and their leg is shaking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're so detached
but they
from
can't
their own reality.
articulate it. They're
that's
detached.
right.
Exactly, yeah. And so being able to get to the point where we realize, and we're not afraid of stress, because there is a certain amount of it that actually leads to better performance, this effect of going into an exam, if you don't have a bit of butterflies, they're useful
of course,
sometimes.
it
Before a
focuses
performance,
you
it's
and-
good.
Yeah,
But then
performance.
it's called the Yerkes-Dodson curve, which is it goes up and your performance goes up. You got a bit of nerves. It's pretty good for you. You hit this precipice, and the second you go past that, you suddenly can't see. You're in an exam. You can't think straight. You're in front of camera and you lose your words. That's when stress is tipped over, and that's when a little bit is good at getting you out of bed, getting you going.
Yeah.
Because you're excited, excitement and anxiety can go hand in hand, but there's just a little bit that is good and then too much that really has long-term effects on you. Yeah.
What do you say to men who maybe have lived on adrenaline and have had all this pressure and all this stress, and then suddenly it stops, and then that withdrawal from the adrenaline? How do you manage that suddenly? Do people find another stress to fill up that adrenaline? What do they do when it's suddenly taken away? Is it like a void or a vacuum? Or?
It can be very difficult. No doubt, Jamie, when you moved past that and you had a moment of pause and were like looking back at those years and realizing how overwhelmed you probably were and constantly going and churning, everything kind of just becomes this muscle that is moving towards survival. And when you realize that you're actually not enjoying anything, that you're not in the moment at all, lots of those guys, and that often happens much later on in life because they keep going until they run out of steam.
Yeah.
And then there's this vacuum. There's this hole underneath them, and they don't have the skills to be able to pick up new things and fill that, in some ways. So we want to get to the point where guys are realizing, are connecting with that feeling within themselves that maybe the past 2, 3, 4 weeks have been really full on, and having the language to be able to say to someone, I need to pause here. I need to realize, I need to recalibrate. I need to work out what's happening.
Yeah. I wish someone had told me at 21 that stress was so destructive, because I think that's something, I've learned over time, and I've watched some of my friends go into poor health through, their lack of dealing with stress.
Yeah.
But
we We need the
Now
skills. We need the skills. It's school and university. You should be teaching stress reduction. You know, it's important.
Exactly. I have a friend who does mindfulness as part of her lessons. So she senses, she's a drama teacher, of course, and she's, my age. So we have the experience and we can look back and go, this stress we put on our children is just way too much. So she senses a class is really stressed. She won't do a normal lesson. She'll just relax them, which is a really, she's rare. But this is what we should be doing. And I think we're at our age, we've got this, not our age, I'm older than you, Jamie, but, as you get older, we've got the skills, we've got the experience to be able to say what's important in life. And you talking about, in my day, we'd hug trees, and it was sort of like a bit of a joke, but it was a really beautiful thing to do. Yes. I do it outside the studio before I come in. There's some really old paperbarks. So, there must be 100 years old. Did you notice them coming in?
They're all through this area,
They're incredible. And they're growing out of asphalt. And I always give them a bit of a hug, go, good on you. I don't know how you survived. And it's just that moment of connection with nature. And you just have to value that and recognize it and thank nature for what it does, because as you say, all this technology, if you're going straight from an office back home to the telly or something.
It's incredible how well they survive, by the way, these paperbucks in these streets.
Because amazing.
You're right, the pathways go right up to them, and you would think that the soils would become anaerobic, but Melaleuca quinquenervia, our paperbark tree, is probably one of the most stoic trees in our system. And our Indigenous used the bark to wrap their fish and their food up, and they would cook their food wrapped in the paper bark, right? And it's got so many brilliant uses, but they've also got nitrogen-fixing nodules and a whole range of survival techniques that other non-native trees don't have. And so, one of my pet hates is why are we planting London plane trees, Platanus hybrida, all through our streets, which are,
cause everyone asthma as well.
So, causes asthma, gives us all hay fever. I get hay fever from when we could be planting these native trees that require zero care and they still thrive their heads off.
Finally, the paperbark chat we all needed.
That's what we needed. If only we, treated ourselves like a paperbark, if we had nitrogen nodules, I mean, if we understood ourselves, when you talk about trees and plants like this and your knowledge of them and how they exist and how they grow, we need that knowledge about ourselves from a very early age.
That's right.
So we can recognize what we need to do to...
And so that we can enjoy, and this is the thing, you are not going to gain that knowledge from a standing start in your 60s.
No, that's right.
It needs to be a lifelong lesson of what matters to me, how am I moving through the world, how do I grow, how am I going to understand how I tick. And those things cannot come when you retire. They need to come much earlier on, and they need to be instilled so that we're not just churning our way, to the end.
Yeah,
you're right. It's that evolution. It's the teaching. It's the experience. It's falling down, picking yourself up again. It's making all those mistakes, and then coming full circle into where we are today, and then passing down some of those learnings to as many people as you can. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. That's our responsibility, isn't it, as we get older, is to share what we've learnt and hope that our children or grandchildren don't make the same mistakes. So, Jamie, what would you say to someone who was maybe hitting their 50s and feeling like they're winding down or they're stuck or something? Or, I mean, you just took that huge leap in your 20s to do horticulture while you were doing something completely different, the dancing. What would you say to, have you got any friends who you feel are stuck or?
I have. And I say the same thing to all of them. Find something that you're passionate about, dive into it, learn, feed your brain, make yourself get engaged in it, because it will provide you with the fuel that you need to push you well into your retirement and way past that. And I don't like to use the word retirement because I'm never going to retire. I've decided I'm just going to keep working because I love my work. But find what it is you're passionate about and learn more and feed your brain and And it's funny, if it's benefiting other people, you will also find another way to keep energy within yourself. So don't just feed yourself. Find something that feeds other people and other communities, and there's a sense of worthiness around what it is that you're doing that makes you feel good about your day and what you've learned and how you've passed it on.
Just to sort of wrap up, what would your tip be to people over 50 who feel perhaps a bit stuck? What's one habit do you think they could, because we're talking about you have to do it regularly and institute it as part of your everyday routines. Is there one habit?
It is funny that I am very much, hopefully, not in my 50s, but I spend a lot of time with men in their 50s and 60s and do clinical work with them and research with them, because they are hungry and they're looking for ways to improve the rest of their lives and seek understanding about themselves. And I kind of say the same thing which I've been talking to Jamie about, which is pick up the phone and call someone, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Reach out, lean out. And it doesn't need to be a mental health conversation. It doesn't need to be something that's weird and awkward. It's just like, let's go for coffee. Let's go for a walk. Let's do this thing called life together. And when you're finding that passion, that comes through other people. I went to a dinner party when I was 18 and someone started to talk to me about masculinity, and I was like, what? What are we talking about here? And then they connected me with someone else, and slowly but surely doors open and your life opens, and there is no end point to learning. There is no end point to interest, to passion, to drive. So, yeah, I think that realizing, firstly, that you are stuck does not mean failure. Understanding that you're at an inflection point, and there is now heaps of opportunity and potential for doing something different. Yep. And that is a beautiful thing that we have, which is that there is always this splay of choices in front of us. And so start choosing.
Just be curious.
Yep.
Start choosing. Yep. Can't go wrong. Can't make a mistake. Thank you both so much. That was such a great conversation. Thank you, Jamie Durie.
My pleasure, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Zac Seidler. Thank you very much.
Thanks
that was really great. Thanks for being so open.
Great fun.
Thank you to Jamie Durie and Dr. Zac Seidler. You've been listening to Dare, the Time of Your Life, brought to you by Australian Seniors. Please leave a review and share this show with someone you know, or plenty of people you know, even better. Visit seniors.com.au/podcast for more episodes. I'm Jean Kittson. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's your time, so dare to make it count.